Well, good evening, friends. Mark Holmes here, and as always, I want to thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Blue Sports Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. I hope you guys are having a great hump day today. It is, of course, just about over. Another day is in the books, and that brings us one day closer to the NFL season. I basically already talked about most of the things that have been happening, of course, today. Dak Prescott literally has said, I put the injury concerns and things like that behind me, that literally he doesn't even think about it when he goes on the field, which is great because when you think about that happening, they always say you got to get it back up off the horse, after you get basically kicked off. And I guarantee you my man Jet D can definitely tell you that because he was a bull rider, and I'm sure he had to get his ass up off the ground and get back up on that bull as well. He seemed to be doing great. Dak Prescott, you can see the confidence is building with him each and every day, and tomorrow is the last day of veterans OTAs. Next week will be rookies mini camp, so that way they'll have another week of time to be working, of course, with the coaches to learn the system because they're new in town. But we have a lot of guys that are new in town that need to learn the system, but be that as it may. We know that Zeke Elliott is looking really good. Micah is definitely becoming really, really good. And the defense seems to be getting a little bit of the edge to them, a little bit of dog in them. And you're seeing a lot of guys that are trying to turn the narrative around on what they've done in the past and make amends for the future. And quite frankly, everybody is fighting for a roster spot for next year. We have 34 guys that are on the last part of their deal or a one-year deal. And so it behooves them to make the Cowboys understand they can't live without them. The only concern, or the biggest concern, there's always a lot of concerns, but the biggest concern, of course, is Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is doing what Amari Cooper usually does, which is he has problems. He's had problems with his plantar fasciitis, forgive me, from back in his days with the Raiders. He's been dealing with that every year that we've had him, and it's something that's just been that nagging injury. Now, I want to be on board with saying I love Amari Cooper. When he is healthy, there is nobody, and I mean nobody, who can run more precise routes. Part of the reason why CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup are as good as they are is because of the attention that Amari Cooper makes as a number one. And the mistake that a lot of fans will say is, oh, well, we can just make Michael Gallup a number one. But see, I don't necessarily see that. I do see possibility CeeDee Lamb becoming a number one, which is a possibility. Now, for the Cowboys, and to their credit, as fans, we always look at contracts and say, oh, you're paying that guy too much money. How could you give him $100 million to this guy? Well, you can't really pay attention to the top number. What you really have to look at is how it's structured, okay, and what is the guaranteed money. New Orleans gave, I can't think of their backup quarterback name, Tyson Hill. Tyson Hill, a $75 million contract, a 5-year, $75 million deal. Let me say that again, for Tyson Hill. But the thing about that is, none of it's really guaranteed. It's basically bullshit, okay? They're paying him for this year, and they used his deal as a way to have cap relief. Well, the Cowboys, when they signed Amari Cooper to his deal, it was a $100 million deal, which is the truth. But it was only $40 million of it guaranteed, which in essence was 2 seasons, last year and this year. And the reason they probably did that is because they've had injury concerns. When I brought this up, a few weeks ago, people were like, oh, you're just hating on Amari Cooper. You just don't know. I'm not trying to hate on anybody. I'm not telling the Cowboys what they should do. I'm not saying what they should do one way or the other. What I'm trying to point out is options, because you have to have options every which way you go. You don't want to have yourself with only one route and one outcome. They looked at this and said, Amari, we love what you did. We're paying you $20 million a year for the next 2 years. After that, it's up to the two sides decide, do we want to continue this relationship or go on? For Amari, hey, I got $40 million guaranteed for the next 2 years. After that, who knows? Maybe I end up going to another team if I don't like being at the Cowboys, or maybe we work out a deal that we can stay, because they can adjust that. But for the Cowboys, the way they got it structured, if Amari Cooper continues to have the nagging injuries, and now we're hearing that he may not be ready to start training camp. Let me say it again. We had heard that he had ankle surgery about a week after the season ended that was supposed to be a cleanup, just a minor thing. So we're talking about January, February, March, April, May, June. July is the beginning of training camp. That's 6 months after an ankle cleanup surgery. Now, I'm sure Amari Cooper, because he's one of those guys who, much like Gary Clark was always injured, it seemed, during the week. But come Sunday, he would show up and he would show off and play really well for the Washington football team. And that's Amari Cooper. You remember when Amari Cooper came to the Dallas Cowboys in the middle of the season without having an off season, him and Dak clicked immediately and did great things in that season. And it's been pretty much every offseason that Amari Cooper has not been able to perform in training camp. Just is what it is. But in the same sense, you have to look at it from the standpoint of, do we rely on Amari Cooper for years to come? Or do we look at it and say we can reshuffle the wide receiver group and end up getting and holding on to Michael Gallup? Because in all retrospect, the way you look at it is it's $20 million for Amari Cooper. Maybe it's only $10 or $11 million to hold on to Michael Gallup as your third wide receiver. CeeDee Lamb, you don't have to pay him for another 3 years. And you could go into the next draft and say, we're going to draft a receiver. And this way, you end up saving some of that cap money for the following year. You get younger, and you're able to move on without a lot of pain. Again, let me stop and reiterate. I'm not saying that this is what the Cowboys will do or should do, but it's one of those things that you must look at if you are a team. The reality is your best ability is your availability, and Amari Cooper has an injury history. And the thing about injury histories are you don't just get past injuries. As you get older, you have more and more injuries than when you're younger. Those nagging injuries take longer and longer to heal. So this is definitely a concern for the Cowboys. I'm not sure that CeeDee Lamb is ready to take on that number one role if it ends up being that Amari Cooper, that this injury that we were told was just a routine cleanup. If it ends up being that it is beyond training camp and maybe longer, and this is where I'm concerned because a routine cleanup should not be 6 months. There may be more to this than what we're being led on to. Much like Tom Brady, who they said was having a cleanup scope on his knee, who is not, a full go yet as we speak. There may be a little bit more to the story that's just not out right now. So let's hope that it's better by training camp and he doesn't miss too much of training camp. Other than that, our team seems to be gelling and getting together. It seems like the guys are playing for each other, looking out for themselves, but also playing as a team. We'll have to wait and see if all of the hoopla and all of the excitement and guys buying in to what Dan Quinn is selling them on defense. Everything always looks good when it's the off season. We'll see when it comes to the regular season how it goes. One more note, and what is actually great news. You'll remember a few weeks ago, me, Michael Anthony Fitness, the stinking New York Giant fan, were all at the CSA show in Chantilly where, I got a couple of new pieces and things. There were no autograph signings at that show. There were no autograph signings at that show because, of course, COVID. This weekend, there's actually an autograph signing show in Philadelphia, CSA show. I would not go to Philadelphia for the signing show. It's mostly actually Eagle players. Unlike what the Washington football team does, they don't usually have too many there at the signing shows in their own backyard. Come July 10th, 11th, and 12th, next month, CSA will have another show, and they will have players, and Drew Pearson will be there. Now, typically, that show will have a few, if not several, of the current Dallas Cowboy players usually will come on there. I don't know if that's going to be the case still with COVID or not, but Drew Pearson coming will be great because he is one of the football gods that I definitely want to get signing the football gods over there. Hopefully we'll end up having some more Dallas Cowboy players, and what we'll be doing, of course, is we'll be getting some nice signed merchandise that we'll be giving away here on the show. So I'm excited as can be and can't wait for next month, because next month the team will actually be headed to Oxnard for training camp. And with that being said, you know what time it is. It's time for us to get up on out of here. I'll see you guys later on.